A path through thick woods and eerie quiet led to the out-of-the-way settlement of Blackwood. Sarah, a journalist, had heard rumors about this town for years, that it was isolated and that a sinister secret lay behind its seemingly peaceful surface. There had been disturbing reports of missing tourists and strange occurrences in Blackwood piling up in her inbox for weeks. The local government was silent, likely because they believed the stories were baseless superstition. But like a moth to a flame, Sarah was drawn to the mystery and resolved to find the answer. Sarah approached the town boundaries and was met by a scene straight out of a fairy tale: beautiful homes and cobblestone streets. The residents of the town presented an outwardly pleasant facade, yet underneath their pleasant demeanor lurked unspeakable atrocities. She started her search for clues about the missing tourists by asking around at a neighborhood bar. The locals were secretive and guarded, but Sarah's persistent questioning broke through their defenses. Henry, a grizzled old regular who was sitting alone and sipping a beer, moved in closer and said something. He said, "You shouldn't be asking such questions, miss," and his eyes widened in alarm. "It's probably best if you don't know that." There was no stopping Sarah. She dug deeper into the town's history and discovered that the disappearances date back decades. When traveling through Blackwood, passengers frequently vanished without a trace, leaving behind only rumors about their final moments. Sarah, determined to learn the truth, followed the breadcrumbs to an old, dilapidated chapel on the outskirts of town. She had a feeling that this hidden location held the key to unlocking the mysteries of the town. Sarah uncovered a secret entrance within the church that connected to a murky, twisting passageway. The air got chilly and wet as she descended, and she could hear her own footsteps reverberating back and forth. The tube seemed to be closing in on her, suffocating her. Sarah finally emerged from the cave after what seemed like an age. Human bones, stripped of their flesh, covered the tunnel floor as the flashlight sputtered. Empty skulls looked back at her as if to accuse her. As the horrible reality dawned on her, her pulse pounded. The missing passengers had been sacrificed in a cannibalistic ceremony, and their bodies had been dumped in this ghoulish room under Blackwood. Sarah's heart sank as she realized that what she had seen was far more evil than she had ever dared to believe. Her study had taken a sinister turn, and she now had to confront the awful task of revealing the cannibalistic village and all the horrors that lurked beneath its surface. Increasingly terrified, she realized the worst nightmare had only just begun. Sarah had discovered the dark truth of Blackwood, a village where the residents ate visitors who didn't look suspicious. The underground chapel's crypt full of human remains was a gruesome reminder of their horrific rites. Sarah, who was terrified but determined, realized it was too late to turn back. She wanted hard proof to reveal the truth and end the town's reign of fear to the outside world. Journalistic curiosity drove her to risk everything to learn more about Blackwood's cannibalistic atrocities. Martha, a cautious informant whose eyes were engraved with great grief, provided her with the first lead in the case. Martha's secret suffering at the loss of her spouse to the town's dark customs dates back many years. Motivated by the need to stop any additional killing, she mustered the strength to speak up. Martha said that the town's sinister customs go back to a shadowy cult that worshipped old, evil deities and had been passed down through the centuries. They thought that if they ate the flesh of strangers, their evil gods would grant them endless life. Sarah's inquiries led her deeper into the shadowy underbelly of Blackwood. She found out that the residents of the town only pretended to welcome strangers in order to trap them. Nighttime rites were conducted in secret with carefully selected victims to prevent suspicion. She discovered that the town's crumbling church had been used as a gathering place for its inhabitants to chant and perform rituals in secret in order to placate the evil entities they thought resided inside. Grim evidence of the horrors that had taken place there, the walls reeked of blood and rot. Sarah, intent on collecting indisputable evidence, began methodically documenting her discoveries, taking disturbing pictures of the secret church and the town's macabre gatherings. These bits of proof were all she had to fight the townspeople and their ungodly ways. Sarah found that the townspeople had been affected by the nefarious rituals as she dug more into the town's terrible secrets. The boundary between human and monster had begun to blur as madness and despair had become daily companions. With a newfound determination, Martha volunteered to help Sarah expose the cannibalistic town's seedy underbelly to the outside world. They collaborated on a plan to expose Blackwood's atrocities and end the town's reign of terror. They were determined to see their scheme through to the end, but they had a sneaking suspicion that the locals wouldn't give up their dark ways without a struggle. A terrifying discovery awaited Sarah and Martha. Their pursuit of justice may lead them into a nightmare conflict with powers more malicious and insidious than they could have ever imagined. Knowing that their meeting with Blackwood's cannibalistic monsters would test the bounds of their courage and humanity, Sarah and Martha prepared themselves for the dangerous voyage ahead, with the truth weighing heavily on their shoulders. Sarah and Martha were determined to expose the cannibalistic horrors that afflicted the village of Blackwood, and they had the proof to back up their claims. They knew the coming fight would be filled with danger as they prepared to confront the evil powers lurking in the shadows of the town. To obtain further proof, they planned to infiltrate one of the town's secret ceremonies, a dangerous mission that would require them to pretend to be locals in order to film the gruesome ceremony. Sarah and Martha hid out in Blackwood by posing as tourists, blending in with the locals and using the kind locals as a shield. They began to feel increasingly nervous as the ceremonial night drew near. The town's abandoned church was the setting for the ominous gathering as the moon hung low in the sky. Sarah and Martha, who were hiding among the local residents, saw a horrific scene. Men and women in hoods shouted in a rumbling language that sent chills down their spines. A macabre shrine, complete with candles and mysterious symbols, was placed in the room's center. Another poor wanderer had been snared by the townspeople, an unsuspecting victim to be sacrificed that night. Sarah's camera clicked softly as she recorded every gruesome moment of the rite. She understood the importance of this proof in disclosing Blackwood's dark dealings to the public. As the terrifying culmination of the ceremony approached, the anxiety in the room was evident. Sarah and Martha took advantage of the town's preoccupation as they heard the chanting become louder and more passionate. Subtly, they indicated that the traveler should leave in the hopes of saving them from the gruesome end that was imminent. Sadly for Sarah and Martha, the townspeople were not as clueless as they had wanted to be. The air was thick with suspicion, and the masked people swiftly caught on to the fact that something was wrong. Fear spread throughout the church and disorder broke out. After Sarah and Martha's cover was revealed, they desperately tried to get away from the enraged townspeople by leaving the chapel. The constant pursuit of the angry villagers was a terrifying event that pushed the fleeing people to their physical and emotional breaking points. Sarah and Martha were able to escape their pursuers late at night when the moon shed an eerie glow over the woodland around Blackwood. They ran for cover in a secluded nook, panting and shaking with terror. Once Sarah and Martha had the incriminating proof in their grasp, they knew they were in danger from the evil that lurked in Blackwood. The fight for justice had entered a dangerous new phase, as the townspeople would do everything to keep their dark secrets safe. Sarah and Martha were exhausted but unwavering in their resolve to confront the cannibalistic village. Now they were on the run in Blackwood's merciless forest, where darkness ruled supreme and unspeakable monsters awaited them. They knew their search for justice was not ended as they met in the darkness to discuss their next action. They would need all their might and will to see the fight against the cannibalistic monsters of Blackwood through to the conclusion. Sarah and Martha just evaded the townspeople in Blackwood, and the chase had exhausted them both physically and psychologically. The fight for justice had taken a dangerous turn, and now they were hiding out in the harsh countryside that surrounded the town. Sarah and Martha had amassed incriminating proof of Blackwood's cannibalistic atrocities throughout the eerie ritual, and they were eager to share it with the world. Evil powers were present in the town, and they would do everything to keep their dirty little secrets safe. The hopelessness of the locals increased daily, a danger to the macabre rites that had kept the community alive for centuries. Sarah and Martha had become symbols of opposition. The evil authorities of the town, including a mysterious person called the Elder, had incited the citizens to track down the runaways. There were many threats to Sarah and Martha as they traveled through the woods. They avoided capture by their unrelenting pursuit as they made their way across dangerous terrain, such as deep forests and rivers. Even though worry and tiredness chipped away at them, they stayed committed to uncovering the truth. A tragic letter arrived one night as they gathered in their improvised tent deep in the forest's gloom. Henry, the aged source who first forewarned Sarah of the town's malevolence, had sent the message. Henry had evaded the townsfolk and was living in the woods. He was eager to help Sarah and Martha in their search for justice and knew crucial details about the town's dark past. Although their encounter was tense, Henry's offer of assistance provided a spark of optimism. Henry said the town's cannibalistic rites had been kept secret for years, and the evil powers that drove them were firmly rooted. The elder was a feared and manipulative character who exercised tremendous power over the citizens of the town. They came up with a bold scheme to take on the elder and expose the world to the horrors of Blackwood. The plan called for re-entering town, but this time with an outside team looking into disappearances in the area. Sarah and Martha's emotions were full with worry as they got closer to Blackwood. The town took on an even more sinister air, as if the evil powers within could feel their return. All the pieces were in place for a showdown of catastrophic proportions. The party of outsiders, with Sarah and Martha's incriminating material, sneaked into Blackwood at night. The hour of judgment had come, and the citizens of the town were ready to fight to the death to protect their grisly secrets from exposure at the elder's evil bidding. The church, the scene of their first showdown, once again became the focal point of their fight for fairness. Church turmoil broke out as the outsiders faced the elder and exposed the horrible proof, and the veneer of politeness among the townspeople cracked. When news of the cannibalistic atrocities and dark rites of Blackwood spread, the town's residents were forced to halt their reign of terror. The elder, in a fit of lunacy and despair, tried to run away, but he was captured by the forces of just judgment. Blackwood became a symbol of the darkness that may lie inside the human spirit following the confrontation, and the remaining townspeople were brought into jail. The dark past of the city would be recorded in the books of terror. Sarah and Martha had succeeded in revealing the cannibalistic atrocities of Blackwood to the outside world, but the experience had left permanent wounds. The fight for fairness had cost them dearly, and they would never be able to shake the nightmares associated with their time spent in that town. As they set out from Blackwood and into the vast wilderness ahead of them, they realized that the fight against evil was far from over. Blackwood's horrors had been defeated, but the evil that sat dormant in every person was a force to be reckoned with and might rear its ugly head at any time. Sarah and Martha, armed with a newfound sense of purpose, set out on a mission to illuminate the shadows of mankind and take on the evil that threatened to entangle the helpless. Their dedication to seeking retribution in the face of awful cruelty has turned into a permanent way of life.